Just nailed it.
Agreed.
I don't know about you, but I just want to go hunting. It makes me feel so good. I just want to go hunting. Try to find me in the woods. Man, do I love October, even in the insanity of 2024. Greetings, blood brothers across the hinterland. Keith and Eric, I love you people. We celebrate the spirit of the real American wild. God bless you.
Well, you know what, everyone that's listening, welcome to another virtual campfire with, of course, Ted Nugent and I. It's like old home week. It's like we're back doing the nightly news, Ted, except today, this morning, we have a very special guest, a gentleman running for the U.S. Senate in the great state of Wisconsin, Eric Hovde. And I must put out there right now that we invited not only Eric, but we also invited Tammy Baldwin, who is the current sitting senator in Wisconsin right now, to join us and we let her camp know that our intentions today through this Hunter Nation virtual campfire is to let hunters and Second Amendment advocates and really all of the patriots in Wisconsin know where these candidates stand on issues that matter most to them. And Mr. Hovde graciously accepted mine and your invitation, Ted, but Tammy Baldwin chose to set this out. What does that say to you, Ted, about Tammy Baldwin and her take on hunting issues?
Well, it's a glaring and very obvious exposure of what people stand for. You know, I'm a radical. I'm an extremist. I actually believe in the vision of the founding fathers. I'm so radical and extreme that I believe that the wildlife belongs to we, the people, not the king. How extreme can I be? I believe in God, family, country, Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the 10 Commandments, the Golden Rule, Declaration of Independence, good over evil, that work ethic, the man in the swirling dust of the American dream arena where we put our heart and soul into being the best that we can be. So we're in the asset column. I'm so extreme that I believe in law and order. So, Keith, I'm here to celebrate those that stand with those basic quality of life principles. And obviously, old Tammy has escaped because maybe she has other priorities. So, Eric, welcome to the spirit of the wild campfire. It really is about motivating true conservatives, conservationists, constitutionalists to stand up and vote to earn the freedoms that our founding father outlined that were self-evident truths individually from God. Boy, am I radical or what?
I love it, Ted. And I was just, before we got on, I was just telling Ted how much time I, as a young guy, rocked and rolled air guitar to many of his songs. But look, I always have considered myself a conservationalist. You know, I used to call myself an environmentalist until the environmentalists became so radical and extreme, and they were actually doing things against the environment.
Yeah.
But I love this setting because me and my buddies always, when we'd go camping, would have the ring of fire. You know, you're sitting around the campfire, we're drinking whatever, you know, a lot of whiskey back then. And, you know, the ring of fire, the ring of truth. And so it's a great feeling, a great setting. And thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, Eric, we've been monitoring you. We know that conservation, constitutional, conservatism, they all come from the same basic principle, and that is to be the best that you can be. And you're talking about environmentalism. There is nothing better for the environment. These are powerful words, and I'm a radical for stating them. There's nothing more beneficial to quality air, soil, and water and the environment overall than hunting, fishing, trapping, farming, ranching, real resource stewardism. So I'm just a goofy guitar player from Detroit, but my instincts, and I was raised by a great father, my Warren Henry Nugent, my mother, Mary and Dorothy Nugent, they disciplined, but they also guided me in the outdoor conservation lifestyle. So remember, real environmentalists have a hunting license, a fishing license, and or a trapping license in their pocket. And that's what we're here to celebrate, because if someone claims to be a conservative, we have found that the vast majority of licensed hunting families in America really believe in God, family, country, law, and order. So that's the voting gang that we're trying to inspire, and we are successful in motivating to get out there and vote those values. So Eric, Keith and I have determined that you are such a roustabout in the asset column that you deserve us and we deserve you.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
Let me start with this, Eric, if you don't mind. Obviously, you haven't been in politics. You're not a career politician, which plays very well to a lot of the hunting and fishing and trapping families in Wisconsin. Why did you want to get involved in this race? What do you think you can bring to Wisconsin hunters and patriots that they're not getting right now?
Sure. Look, it may sound old-fashioned, it may sound a bit corny, but the reason why I got into this race is very simple. I love my country. I think somehow our country has lost sight of how special America is. Our founding fathers gave us the most beautiful document called the Constitution that has provided more civil liberties, freedoms, and prosperity than any human society has ever created.
Yep.
And, I've watched over the last 4 years, and I've just woken up in disbelief what's unfolding in my country. What is right has become wrong, and what is wrong has become right. And they're destroying our country at every single level. I mean, they're attacking our Constitution. They want to take us down a socialist path instead of our free market system. They want to change and destroy family values. They want to remake the family. They can't even agree what a man and a woman is today.
Crazy.
It just all their agenda. They say they're environmentalists, and yet they do things that are very damaging to the environment. And we can get into that. So I just couldn't sit by. Look, Ted mentioned it. In my hierarchy of order, it's God, family, and country. And they're just destroying our country, trying to remake the family, and they have no belief in God. So, and we saw that very evidently this past weekend with Kamala Harris laughing at that person, said, "You're at the wrong rally," when the person said Jesus is Lord.
Right. Sad.
So yeah, I mean, that's why I ended up getting into this race, Keith.
Well, we have a lot of issues we want to tackle with you. I'll give the first one, and then I'll let Ted go after some others. We've polled extensively in the state of Wisconsin among hunters. The number one issue to them right now is the unmanaged wolf population, which is devastating the deer herds. We're having in Wisconsin tons of depredation of livestock and far, far too many pets being killed by these unmanaged, uncontrolled wolves. Some people even say that it's just inevitable under the current lack of management that children and humans are going to be next. What would you say to the Wisconsin hunters, your position on the delisting of the gray wolf?
Look, it's very clear. We need to delist the wolf, and you can't play games with it like what Senator Baldwin has said, where she says, I support delisting the wolf, but she put in the bill that any attorney can take, or any environmental group can go to any court in the country. That's absurd, because you know what's going to happen. They're going to get an environmental group that will go to some liberal judge in New York or San Francisco and block delisting the wolf. Congressman Tom Tiffany has a bill in front of the House that would prevent that, and it would allow the delisting of the wolf. And if there's ever going to be a court that should review it, it should be a court in northern Wisconsin, not off in San Francisco and New York. So it's just a classic, career politician, Senator Baldwin, that just is completely misleading people and deceiving people of what is actually going on.
If you sit in the U.S. Senate after the first of the year, and Tom Tiffany's bill actually made it through the House and it's sitting in the Senate right now, if you get a chance to cast a vote, are you telling the Wisconsin hunters right now that you will vote to delist the gray wolf with no judicial review?
I will absolutely support to delist the wolf with no judicial review. And look, Keith, you just said it. It's not only having a devastating impact on the deer population, the economy, livestock, pets, but I think there is no question if we don't get this done, what's going to end up happening is you're going to have a child or two. I mean, look, it was a bit ago that couple 15, 16-year-old guys were out hunting and the wolves were coming up on them and they had to shoot them. Thank God they had guns. Otherwise, they may not be here today. So it's becoming a danger. Anybody that's up in the Northwoods, and I've been up there so many times on this campaign, tells you story after story of, they have to, pack while they, walking in their yards and all the rest because they're worried about a deer or a wolf getting them.
I think the most important point here is that delisting the wolf actually benefits the wolf. It becomes a revered and managed big game animal because we have more deer than ever in recorded history, more turkeys than ever in recorded history because they were delisted. They became managed big game animals. Somebody can call a turkey a small game, but that's a big game animal in my world. There are more cougars. There are more black bears in North America than ever in recorded history. And right now, there are more gray wolves across North America, especially in the Great Lakes region, than in over 150 years. So delisting the wolf doesn't mean we're going to start slaughtering. What it means is they become a valuable asset benefiting wildlife balance and biodiversity. So we've got to get the message out there. And Eric, once again, thank you. And what Keith and I have spearheaded here is delisting the wolf actually ensures its future. It ensures that it will always be at a healthy population level because there'll be a valuable annual resource, just like ducks and geese and deer and bear and coyotes and all the other game animals. Right now, we're wasting tax dollars because, as you said, Eric, what's right is wrong, what's wrong is right. You can slaughter thousands of golden and bald eagles with wind turbines every year. But if you and I were to kill a bald eagle, we'd go to jail and get fined to become a felon. So it is tipsy-turvy because anti-environmentalists, anti-wildlife, who are the animal rights people and the anti-hunting people, they have influenced a gullible and I believe ignorant court system that the gray wolf needs protection. It's not being protected. USDA hunters are killing wolves after they've destroyed livestock, and our tax dollars pay that shooter. Our tax dollars reimburse the rancher and the farmer, and the children are being endangered at rural bus stops because the wolves have no fear of man. We've got to get them back in the asset column. Right now, the gray wolf is in the liability column, benefiting no one, including the gray wolf. So thank you for that. This is a very important issue to get us back on a true north, real conservation, wise use, respect for wildlife, including the mighty gray wolf.
No one is a bigger advocate of the Second Amendment than you, Ted. You've served on the board of the NRA, now on the board of Hunter Nation. What would you like to ask Eric his position with regard to the Second Amendment?
Well, I'd like to start by just saying what is glaringly the obvious. I have a First Amendment from God. The founding fathers wrote it down because they knew that if the king wouldn't let you speak your mind or choose a religion or protest the government and have a freedom of the press, that the king didn't allow it. So we better write that down and make sure everybody knows that's a self-evident truth, God-given individual right on the First Amendment. And I would just like to start by saying, I don't need some man to say, oh, by the way, Ted, here's your permit. Here's your license for your First Amendment. I don't need a permit or a license for my First Amendment. And my First Amendment as an individual God-given right is guaranteed by the Constitution and the First Amendment. I have a First Amendment wherever I may roam while I'm alive on planet Earth. That is uncontestable unless you can't tell me what a woman is. Well, Eric, my belief is that the Second Amendment falls in the same self-evident truth, God-given individual right category. And if I hear another guy go, hey, they gave us constitutional carry. I was born with constitutional carry. And since I don't need a permit or a license for my First Amendment, I sure as hell don't need any man to go, oh, by the way, Ted, here's your license to defend your life in this area. Eric, what do you believe is outlined in the Second Amendment regarding individual rights?
Well, Ted, you just stole most of the words I could have said. But look, I think it's very important, and I always try to impress this on younger people. Why did our founding fathers make it the Second Amendment, literally after our right of free speech, because they came from a land where the authorities, the king, could oppress them. And they knew by everybody having a right to bear arms, it would be very difficult for a central government to oppress its people. But you're exactly right. It is a God-given right to defend and protect ourselves. And, this is just one of the stark differences, as I mentioned at the get-go, between me and Senator Baldwin or President Trump and Kamala Harris. We believe in our Constitution. We believe in the amendments to our Constitution. They want to rip up the Constitution. They want activist judges to write laws and whittle away our constitutional rights. And the one they're most after is our Second Amendment. Then again, they have come fully after our First Amendment, and we saw that during COVID. And we see that with big tech and big media that, backs them. And we're in a very dangerous spot right now in this country. And, the one who's been probably the biggest advocate and probably moved him more to the conservative side, Republican side, is Elon Musk, because he saw when he bought Twitter what the extent that they were doing to shut down our right of free speech. And they've been doing this against the Second Amendment for a long time. And by the way, it's such a joke. Look at where the strictest gun laws are in our country. Chicago, that's the murder capital of our country. DC, that's probably number 2. Baltimore's way up there. It's insane. So, all that they want to do is take our right to bear arms from good people. Bad people will have them. So I'm a very strong supporter in the Second Amendment, but most importantly, in our Constitution. And we've got to get back to that. We have to elect judges that are strict constitutionalists and all be vocal supporters of our Constitution, our First Amendment, and our Second Amendment.
Isn't it a shame, Keith, that Tammy Baldwin declined our invitation? Because what a great opportunity to speak to the conservationist, conservative, constitutional licensed hunting families of Wisconsin and all around the country right now with this crazy technology. I think declining an invitation to express and articulate your belief system, I think says more than if she actually came here and attempted it. So I think, Eric, I got to tell you, self-evident truth is indeed self-evident. And let me tell you, if we didn't have such runaway engineered recidivism where the court system keeps letting out murderers and rapists and child sex traffickers and home invaders and arsonists, they keep letting them out to repeat those crimes, knowing they're going to repeat those crimes. If we would just keep bad guys either locked up or what I believe in, the death sentence at the scene of the crime. If someone tries to kill you, you need to end their life right now. The point being is that if we got the bad guys off the street, which the cops are doing a great job, but the court system keeps letting them out with engineered recidivism, you could be able to buy any gun anywhere, anytime you want, like I did when I was a kid. Unlimited access to unlimited firepower. You could buy a machine gun through the Sears catalog and it would show up at your doorstep with a drum magazine for like $29.95. My point is, during the era where there was unlimited access to unlimited firepower, there was no such thing as a school shooting. So thank you for that. We appreciate your courage coming on, but of course it doesn't take courage when you're guided by self-evident truth, logic, and common sense. And Eric, you just displayed that, and we salute you for that. And we're proud to call you a blood brother right here at hunternation.org.
Another top issue among hunters in Wisconsin, and it's really nationwide right now, Eric, is the border crisis. In fact, you hear it every day. Every state is now a border state. I'm sure Wisconsin, like all the other states, is feeling the impact of this massive inflow of illegals into the country. Ted and I talk about this all the time. It impacts not only the economy, impacts our streets, our safety, and a lot of things. What is your position on the border crisis?
Look, the border absolutely needs to be closed. I call it the rotten onion. It's a strange term, but let me explain it. An onion has many layers to it. So it's the first layer of our open border when we brought, whatever the number is, they really don't know, 15, 16, 20 million illegal immigrants is. It's impacting the affordability of housing and healthcare for our own people. Look, when you have all these people using our healthcare system and they're not paying into it, the Democrats never seem to understand that there is no such thing as a free lunch. And if they're not paying into it, that cost gets transferred to all the rest of all us Americans that do pay into it. It's impacting the housing access and affordability. Second issue is the issue of crime. Look, we had a mother and their child in a small town, Prairie du Chien, of only 5,000 that was brutally raped for over a day by this illegal immigrant from Venezuela, gang member. We know Venezuela has dumped their jail cells into our country.
Yeah.
And then the fentanyl crisis. They flooded our streets. We lost 108,000 last year, 112,000 Americans the year before to this poison that's produced in China, brought to the drug cartels, and they bring it up over our southern border. And then lastly, they've created a humanitarian crisis. Look, I have my foundation that's been fighting against sex trafficking for 20 years. I've been rescuing children in this country and around the world through my Hovde homes, and they can't account for 300,000 children.
How can that be?
I can tell you a lot of those children have ended up in the sex trade. So we need to close the southern border, and we need to get these illegal immigrants and all the criminals that have entered into our country back out of our country.
Wow. Another issue that Ted talks about a lot, we all watched the Olympics recently, and we saw, men beating up women in Olympic boxing. But it's even worse than that, Eric, at least in the minds of a lot of hunters and patriots in Wisconsin and across the country. They're concerned about what's going on with men and girls sports, of course, but men and girls bathrooms, these, transgender story hour at our schools that are getting funded by taxpayer dollars. What's your position on this transgender issue?
Oh, mine has been very, very clear. I am absolutely opposed to it. Look, I'm a girl dad. I never had a son, wish I would have, but I had two daughters that I'm blessed with. And they're the center of my life with my wife. And my youngest daughter was the female athlete of the year in the state of Wisconsin in 2017. She was just a phenomenal athlete. When I grew up, Ted knows this, back in our age, when we were growing up, girls didn't have a lot of opportunities in sports. And it was wonderful to see girls get all these opportunities. And my youngest daughter, it was just so much fun. And she won 5 state championships on different teams here in Wisconsin. And then to see them allowing guys and girls sports, I mean, that's insanity. And trying to push them. This is what Senator Baldwin's pushed through her Equality Act. It's nothing equality about it. To trying to push guys to go into girls' bathrooms and locker rooms. I am so opposed to it on multiple different levels. And it's just wrong. They don't even, they say they follow the science. They don't follow the science. Look, my daughter could compete with boys up until about when 11, 12, and then all of a sudden something kicks in. It's called testosterone. And that makes a guy's muscles bigger, stronger, their bones bigger, faster. And then she couldn't compete with good male athletes. So it's absurd. And the Olympics, watching that, of course, the two guys that were in it both won gold. So I'm totally opposed to it. Senator Baldwin's pushing it, and we've got to push back and say enough is enough. But what's most disgusting, they're using the Department of Education to say to school districts, if you don't make this change to Title IX, we're not going to fund you. Where do they get off? It's our taxpayer dollars, and that's what they're doing. And man, I hope me and President Trump will win this thing and shut this down and fast.
Well, Eric, ditto, but it goes much deeper, much more perverted, much more evil than that. We have this harmless drag queen story time that a segment of our society will actually call it a harmless drag queen story time, where perverted fat men in fishnet pantyhose literally twerk their male appendages to little boys and girls singing, "It Won't Lick Itself." It's not harmless. It's perverted. It's evil. And as you alluded to earlier, the left, the communists, the Democrats, the spineless Republicans that don't fight back are literally destroying the family unit, which is the foundation for the greatest quality of life in the world, where you have love and nurturement and discipline and guidance, where a mom and a dad, and when you have that convenience, because sometimes single mothers raise wonderful children. I have so many U.S. Marines and Navy SEALs and Green Berets that were raised by single mothers and sometimes single fathers. But the real foundation of quality of life, productivity, spirit, work ethic, a true North Compass setting comes from a nuclear family. And what the left is truly accomplishing, with the assistance of the teachers' union, graduating the dumbest people in the history of education. They can't read, they can't write, they don't know what personal hygiene is. They think priorities is purple hair and pierced nipples instead of earning your own way, saving for a rainy day, and living within your means. I'm touching base with all the common sense. I have a Real America's Voice Spirit Campfire, and it's all about celebrating truth, logic, and common sense. So this segment of our society that thinks a man should be able to beat up a woman in an athletic event is the manifestation of such cultural deprivation that we've got to make sure we get conservatives and into representing the foundational values: God, family, country, law, and order. So once again, Eric, you hit it out of the park, because I hang out with the best people in the world. I have a Sunrise Safaris. I have another 20 guys at a campfire this Friday, every Friday, August, September, October, and November. And a lot of Wisconsin hunters, they come and hunt with Uncle Ted because I'm so much fun. The campfire is just effervescent masculinity. My point being is that what you represent is represented at those campfires by people in the asset column, people that earn their own way, live within their means, save for a rainy day. So the gender lie, where a U.S. Supreme Court woman refuses and is incapable of actually telling you what a woman is, if that's not the end of a culture, I don't know what would be. So thank you. And I hope that everybody watching right now, they join us at hunternation.org, hunternation.org, because if we got those licensed, conservative, constitutional conservation hunting families to vote those values, Eric, America would be back on a true North Compass setting November 5th.
Eric, I have another question for you. Ted mentioned the live within your means, which is what a novel idea that is. We polled Wisconsin hunters recently, and the economy was one of the top 3 issues. They were asked, do you feel like you're better off now or 4 years ago? The answer was they believed they were better 4 years ago. They don't like the direction of the country right now with regard to economics. Some people use the phrase Bidenomics, what's gone on here recently. What's your position regarding the economy? I know you're a very successful businessman. You're the type of person that may be able to take some outside of politics ideas into Washington, D.C. How can we possibly fix our broken economy and get our citizens back to where they can actually live within their means?
Look, this is one of the most pressing and concerning issues our country is facing. When you think of great societies, how have they collapsed? Whether it was Rome, the certain Chinese dynasties, the Dutch Empire, the British Empire, they first lose their moral compass and then they bankrupt themselves. We have almost $37 trillion in debt. Interest costs on our debt is $1 trillion a year. It's now bigger than our Defense Department budget. And that is what ignited inflation. Because when the Federal Reserve, the bank for the federal government, had to buy all that debt, as Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, which, by the way, they racked up more debt in their 3.5 years than our country's first 230-year history. Think of that. And as a result of that, they had to buy that debt through something called the quantitative easing and increase the money supply. And that's what creates inflation. Inflation, the definition, is too much money chasing a fixed amounts of goods and services. They're running the printing press. That's why your groceries have gone up. That's why the cost of all the goods you buy have gone up. Your energy cost, your healthcare cost, you name it. So it is the most important issue that we have to address. And you know what do they say? You know, when you've dug yourself a hole, what are you supposed to do? Stop digging. They just keep digging and digging and digging. And by the way, when they try to say Bidenomics has worked, all our GDP growth is largely from deficit spending. This is the only time, not even the great financial recession, that real wages, that is wages adjusted for the rate of inflation, have gone down over a 3-year period. So look, we have to tackle this problem. It's front and center, and we've got to get serious about it, because otherwise we will disappear into the past, just like all those other empires.
Yeah. Some of my best friends live in Wisconsin, Eric, and I'm going to kick this to Ted here in just 1 second to ask the question, but they're getting a lot of what they believe to be misinformation, because they're getting information that they know as farmers and ranchers in Wisconsin that is not true and will not be helpful for them. Ted, you spend more time around campfires with hunters, farmers, ranchers. You've got your finger on the pulse of rural America. These policies that you've heard Eric talk about here today, how does that square with what you're hearing in the farming and ranching community? And what question or questions would you have to Eric about a very important industry in Wisconsin, and that is farming?
Well, I can conclude it thusly. I have been given the Tyrannosaurus Rex Scrotum Award for 20 years in a row now, because I'm so cocky that I actually stand up for truth, logic, and common sense. But I don't have a hunch about truth, logic, and common sense. I don't even have an opinion or a presumption or an assumption about truth, logic, and common sense. And Keith, you and I have shared campfires. And again, if you find a down-to-earth, grounded guy with dirt in his hands. I did a Mossy Oak podcast called Fistful of Dirt.
Love, cuz. The
people who are in the asset column of America typically have a fistful of dirt. Farmers, ranchers, hunters, fishermen, trappers, outdoorsmen, entrepreneurs in the great outdoor lifestyle. And what Eric is articulating here today, and what you and I believe is core values, Keith, and so do all my family, my band, my crew, my amazing kids and grandkids, my management, Linda Peterson. I have such a gang of rock solid entrepreneur ass kickers out there, that we are smart and we pursue information to be as smart and as knowledgeable as we can, but we're humble servants. I am a humble servant to God's miraculous creation and the lessons of self-evident truth epitomized by what our founding fathers wrote down in those sacred pillars of freedom and the greatest quality of life in the history of the world, the U.S. Constitution, Bill of Rights, and certainly the Declaration of Independence, and all those guidelines for life, liberty, and pursuit of gonzo happiness. But what I hear around the campfire is repetitive of what we're talking about, certainly on the Nightly Nuge, on Shemaine's Real America Voice, Faith and Freedom podcast, what we hear from friends like Jesse Waters and Joe Pags on the radio, and what Rush Limbaugh represented, and what Eric represents here on this gonzo technology today. And what I'm seeing, the comments in the columns here, that we are all humble servants of self-evident truth. When you pay attention, and being clean and sober for 76 years, my radar picks up accurate information, and I'm able to tell the difference between bullshit and truth. And what the media is calling disinformation and misinformation is actually truth, logic, and common sense. It's very rare in the media. I get a lot of it from Fox and a lot of the conservative talk shows. But what you see in the mainstream media literally spits in the face of the values of the best families in the world that I am honored, humbled, motivated, stimulated, inspired around campfires every week. And I had sunrise safaris for over 36 years, 38 years actually. And I spend campfire time with these families. And it's such an open, uninhibited, honest arrangement where people are poking the coals, maybe sticking a backstrap over a hickory log. There's such honesty. There's such truth, logic, and what appears to be extremely common and sensible belief systems. So, Eric, thank you for running to represent the best families, because what you've articulated here today and what Keith and I know, as we absorb and appreciate and prod the family values around those campfires. And when I walk the not so mean streets of America, people come up to Shemaine and I everywhere we go with such positive attitude, and they always articulate these values that we're talking about here today on this technology, this podcast, whatever this is. It is alive and well out there, but it's not represented by the media. It's not represented by Uncle Sam. It's not represented by the Supreme Court oftentimes. It's not represented by our court system. It's not represented by Hollywood. In fact, the belief system that makes the ultimate quality of life is actually spat upon by the people with the most power. So, my friend, I want to help you in any way possible, because Wisconsin for many years was the top hunting state in the nation, which means those families were down to earth, grounded. The great Roy Case in 1931, Roy Case initiated the first bow hunting seasons in the nation in Wisconsin. And I think Wisconsin should have a national every year Roy Case Day. You should know that name, because that bow hunting lifestyle, it is so raw and primal and primitive, because our instincts drive us to be an asset to God's miraculous creation. So Godspeed to you, my friend. We know that you represent the best of us.
Couple quick questions to finish up, Eric. If you were to be able to talk to your farmers and ranchers in Wisconsin directly, with a lot of the disinformation that's getting spread in that state. And I will tell you personally, on behalf of Hunter Nation and the hunters in Wisconsin, I do thank you, because we've held several town halls in Wisconsin where we're trying to get information out to hunters on the wolf issue. We've had meetings with farmers and ranchers in Wisconsin. And again, you're the only one, a lot of local politicians, but you're the only, other than Tom Tiffany and some others, but I'm talking about in this particular race, showed up to talk to hunters and ranchers on these critical issues. What would you say today to the ranchers and farmers in Wisconsin about your position that will help them or hurt them, or exactly what it is and how you compare or contrast to Tammy Baldwin on those issues?
Look, one of the biggest things I hear from farmers, if the government would just get out of my way, I would be able to take care of my land. And that's what we need to do. The government has become over encroaching on literally everything. Look, they're trying to push WOTUS, that's Waters of the United States. And it's so insane that literally a pond on a farm could be treated and regulated like navigable waterways. So regulation, the encroachment on our civil liberties that Ted was talking about is a huge issue. Look at our agricultural bill. Only 20% of that is for farmers. The farm bill should get back to being for farmers, not big giant corporate interest. Look, government is encroaching on everything. Ted talked about, and we started off talking about the environmental movement that's been completely perverted and polluted. They're pushing wind power. I look across the lake that I live on, and I've seen windmills that sit out there. For the first 5-6 years, they were never even hooked up to the power grid. They're not environmentally friendly. They damage our wildlife, not just our bird life, but they know when they put them in the oceans, it hurts whale life and sea life. So the left is pushing all these crazy things, and it's ever increasing government control. And then let me just pick up on one other thing that Ted was talking about, and that's the truth. They have so perverted what the truth is. They use terms like defending democracy, and yet they're destroying democracy. They've weaponized our justice system. They've turned our courts into political theater. That those cases against President Trump were just absolutely a complete joke. By the way, if he was going to be broke a law in 2016, why wasn't he prosecuted in 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23? Why was it until 24? And by the way, why was it in a state court instead of federal court if he broke federal election law? And why did two federal attorneys but look at it and said there's no case. And then why did RFK leave the Democratic Party? Because they're trying to prevent him from being on the ballot, just like they did to President Trump. They're the ones. Hey, this is an important issue in my race, and I hope all the people in the state of Wisconsin know this. The Democratic Party actually has a candidate on the America First brand in my race. Now, why, if they believe in defending democracy, would Democratic donors, attorneys, and signatories get signatures to put on the ballot a Democratic plant in my race, just to try to siphon off votes from me for people thinking, oh, this person's related to Donald Trump. This person is a Democratic plant. That shows you the extent that they will go to destroy our democracy. So I totally agree with what Ted was talking about. Everything they say has been perverted. They're perverting the truth, but there's only one truth. And we've got to push back against their manipulation, using media, using big tech, using government. And as I said, look, we're in a battle for the soul of this country. This is the most consequential election. I'm 60 years old. I thought the most consequential election was President Reagan against Jimmy Carter, and it shifted our country in a wonderful way. But at least Jimmy Carter believed in America. Yeah. He had wrong policies, but at least he was a good man. He just didn't know how to govern properly, and his policies were bad. These people, they want to remake America. They said that, and they're trying to destroy this country. They're just trying to destroy our Constitution, our freedoms, our civil liberties, all the things that we stand for. They're trying to destroy our free market system. And as I said, they're trying to redefine what a family is and all of the rest. So I'm sorry I got on a long rant, but
no, it's great. Great.
We got to do everything we can to save this country and take this country back. And hunters have to get out there and vote.
Yeah.
Too often they say, oh, my vote doesn't count, or they get busy on election day. There's no excuse. I voted yesterday for early voting. We've got 2 weeks. Just get out to the voting booth. And by the way, go grab your buddies, grab your family members, your friends, your colleagues, the people you hunt with, the people you go to church with. We've got to create a wave, because they're going to lie, try to lie, cheat, and steal at every single turn. So we just got to fight and do everything we can. And if everybody does that, we'll win and we'll take this country back.
I have two final questions that I want to ask you, Eric. I saved the most difficult personal question for last. Favorite Ted Nugent song?
Well, Ted and I were talking about this. Most people, it's cat scratch fever, but for me, Ted, do you want to play the little riff and see if people can figure out what it is?
Well, Wisconsin, the Fred Bear song has been the #1 song in Wisconsin for 35 years. But when it comes to standing up for what you believe in, and to your most important point of this exchange here today,
Ted, it's what I air a guitar to, man. You got to get more stranglehold.
This is the guitar lick that I hope inspires people to eliminate the self-inflicted curse of apathy, because worse than communism, worse than the Democrats, worse than socialism, worse than Marxism is the apathy that allows those horrors to exist. So here's the riff. Even around a campfire on an acoustic guitar, I can hammer this son of a bitch like this. Get out there and vote. Everybody go to hunternation.org, and huntthevote.org. Because if you're not voting, those core family values that made the greatest quality of life in the history of the world, the experiment in self-government, the United States of America, a constitutional republic, if you're not voting, the people who are intentionally destroying your country and your life are laughing in your face. So, Eric, that is the most important message here today, is that there are tens of millions of licensed hunters and gun owners that sit out their most important responsibility, and that is to vote in the United States of America. So once again, that's why we created hunternation.org and huntthevote.org. We're not going to tell you to vote for anybody, but you need to do your absolute American responsibility and duty and get out there and vote. Like you said, family, co-workers, church, school, the deer camp, the shooting range, the bowling alley, the barbecue, wherever you may go. We need to scold our fellow conservatives to get out there and vote.
And you know what, Ted? I'm going to break the rules today. Normally, I always say, Ted, I'm going to give you the last word. But Eric has been so candid with us right now, and you've raised one of the most difficult issues that you and I have been fighting for many years, that hunters and 2A supporters set out far too many elections. I believe that this election, as Eric pointed out earlier, is for the soul of America. This is the epic battle of good versus evil. It's too important to set out. So, Eric, I'm going to give you the last word today. I want you to talk directly to those hunters and 2A supporters in Wisconsin that historically set out elections, and tell them why they need to get out and vote and what you think will happen if they set this one out.
Look, back in the 1800s, a Scottish philosopher, historian, talked about the arc of a democracy. And it goes like this: from bondage to faith, from faith to courage, from courage to freedom, from freedom to prosperity, from prosperity to complacency, from complacency to apathy, from apathy, dependency, from dependency back to bondage. Folks, we're in a dangerous spot. And Ted just talked about apathy and slipping into dependency. We've got to change the course of this country. I ask for your vote. I'd be honored to have your vote. I thank Keith. I thank Ted. We've got to go save America. So everybody, please go do your part. I'm the tip of the spear. President Trump's the tip of the spear, but we can't do it without all of you. So go share with your friends, your family. Make sure they know this America First person is just a plant like that the other weird candidate they have. So go out there, spread the word, and let's go save America, everybody. Thanks so much. Ted, this was such an honor to be on a show. I was rocking, so many times, stranglehold. What a great day. Thank you all. Everybody have a wonderful day, and God bless America.
Thank you, Eric. Hey, Ted, will you stick around? I'd like to have you critique this interview and what you thought on Eric's policies.
My love to all those Wisconsin sportsman families out there. Thank you, man.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Ted, it's amazing that you and I get to meet people like Eric. Not that I'm telling our listeners to vote for Eric, but personally, his policies certainly resonate with me personally. And I was very disappointed, Ted, that Tammy Baldwin wouldn't come on to answer these questions, because maybe I would have heard her policies and thought differently. But what did you think? What did we just hear from Eric? And what would you say? And this is Ted Nugent personally. What would you say to the hunters and trappers, fishermen, 2A advocates in Wisconsin after hearing that from a personal perspective?
The answer to saving America literally comes from the lowest of hanging fruit, which is so obvious. And the reason it's low hanging fruit: God, family, country, work ethic, law and order. The reason that's the lowest hanging fruit is because it's self-evident truth and it's common sense. And I think Eric articulated that and projected that. And we have found that when we look into these various candidates across the country, whether it's just on an individual basis or we're representing our friends in the conservative arena, we find that those self-evident truth, logic, and common sense that motivates our daily activities, our work ethic, our priorities, our sense of goodwill and decency, our positive spirit, positive energy, positive attitude. And once again, the most important element of all, that Tyrannosaurus Rex scrotum, to actually stand up and not be afraid to express those self-evident truths in a world of political correctness and cancel culture, where they'll destroy you if you stand up and you actually say what a woman is, if you actually express the irrefutable truth and logic and common sense that men should never have to be allowed to compete with women in the sports arena. I think Eric represented that the Nugent family believes in, that the Mark family believes in, and that the people, I see the comments here. I want to thank everybody for joining us here today. And I want to thank everybody for supporting my big mouth, because I've never been afraid to stand up for what is instinctively, and turns out, evidence-drenched truth, logic, and common sense. On my Real America Voice Spirit Campfire, on our Spirit of the Wild TV show on the Pursuit channel 8 times a week. Shemaine and I have been producing Ted Nugent's Spirit of the Wild TV for 36 years, and it's one of the top-rated hunting shows in the history of television. We thank them for that, but it's not because we kill a big buck once in a while or we have fun. It's because we're not afraid to express those truisms that conflict with the propaganda ministry of the media, the deceit and the treason from Uncle Sam and all the alphabet bureaucracies out there that are overwhelmingly untrustworthy and toxic, criminal, corrupt. So what I heard from Eric Hovde is the Wisconsin that I know. It's the Michigan that I know. It's the Pennsylvania that I know. It's the Georgia that I know. It's the America that I know. Even my buddies up in Northern California, Wilderness Archery up in Rockland, California. These are working hard, playing hard, down-to-earth, grounded farmers and ranchers and vineyard operators and gunsmiths and guides and outfitters and deer hunters and trappers and fishermen. This is the salt of the earth. And again, everybody who's part of this communication, everybody that joins Shemaine and I on a Real America Voice or celebrates the Spirit of the Wild on Pursuit, you can't just nod your head in agreement. You've got to prod your family and friends and coworkers and people at church and school and at deer camp. If you find somebody that's not voting, you need to get on them. You need to beg them, beseech, scold, embarrass if you have to. But the real goal of this exchange here today, Keith, and what you and I have been doing, especially the Nightly News, I can't wait till we reignite that. And hopefully the Nightly News will be on the Pursuit channel and elsewhere. But what I've always been fighting diligently and indefatigably for the American dream that is outlined in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the 10 Commandments, the Golden Rule, that spirit of declaring our independence. And if you believe in that and you know somebody that doesn't vote those values, fix them. So Eric, a big salute to you, and also a big salute to Tammy, because her not showing up and being afraid to express her core beliefs, knowing that it would probably be, I presume, in conflict of those values that make the greatest quality of life in the history of the world, the United States of America, experiment in self-government. We'd like to thank you, Tammy, for basically making your statement that you're not with us. So everybody out there, Keith, a big salute to you. You created Hunter Nation when you discovered that an embarrassing percentage of licensed hunting families in America are not in the asset column. They're in the liability column because they were not registered. They did not vote. But thank God for Hunter Nation and Hunt the Vote. We have now got a circling of the conservative wagons in America. We are now registering and inspiring millions of conservatives to get out there and make a difference, because when you vote conservative values, you're bringing America back to that shining city on the hill. And once again, you're in the asset column, not the liability column that believes the lies and the scams and the duplicity and the cruelty of condemning a man in an audience, Kamala Harris, for saying Jesus is Lord and claiming that that person is at the wrong rally. That person was at the right rally, and the rest of those people represented the worst of the worst. So, Keith, a God bless and a Godspeed to you and everybody out there. This is your chance to recruit and inspire the people in your life to vote those core values and educate them if they don't know what those core values are, because if they graduated from an American school, they probably don't know what those core values are. So it's up to those of us that do know to educate and inspire those in our lives to vote God, family, country, law, and order. Thank you, Keith. We are beholden to you for the sacrifices that you've made creating this incredible network.
Well, thank you. And Ted, thanks for all you're doing, because I truly believe this with all my heart, that when hunters, Second Amendment, and really the Constitution supporters that you and I are reaching out to, when good people in America vote, America wins. Well, listen, thanks for your time today, and thanks for everybody for listening. And if you do one thing in the next 2 weeks, I hope you do a lot of things, but the one thing you got to do is vote.
Vote. Get out there, vote early.